But it is very much something that the Democrats are trying to have as their victory in this situation.
What about the Republicans who voted for this? I know they're few in number. Are they going to face any electoral blowback, any political consequences? I mean, you can make the argument they put maybe their careers on the line. Is that how it's being perceived within the Republican Party here in the state?
I think it really depends on who you ask. When you look at the district demographics themselves, the people who did vote in this in certain cases, a lot of them are in these more competitive districts where they are running against Democrats and perhaps want to have, from a political perspective, less ammo on this issue, right? But when you look at this, I don't know if that's necessarily unique in all these cases. I know Shauna Bullock gave about a 25-minute long speech explaining her vote to the point where members of the gallery were groaning and screaming, "This is a disgrace, just vote already," and it just kept on going, the speech. And it was for the point being, the point she was trying to make were the pregnancies she was describing were her own pregnancies. So this got very personal on the Senate floor as people were explaining their votes. I think there, of course, is always going to be a layer of politics with these things, but at the end of the day, it's important to know that when it comes to this issue specifically, some of the politicians there were also recognizing how deeply personal a lot of this issue is, and that aspect, that human aspect of it, really came into play yesterday with certain senators explaining their vote both for and against the repeal. And
welcome back here to Live Now from Fox. I'm Andrew Kraft. Let's continue with more of these top stories, including and especially on the issue of abortion. It's already playing center stage in this presidential election year. It's going to do that as well in the Sunshine State of Florida. We have a few Live Now looks in and around the state there. You can see some of them. Let's put up the locators here. So there you see Jacksonville in the upper right, Tampa in the lower right, and there is Orlando, Florida in the larger box. These are live pictures all across the state of Florida. Well, as you know, yesterday, May 1st, the 6-week abortion ban went into effect there in Florida. We're going to be breaking all of this down. What does this mean? And remember, similar to Arizona, Florida voters will be faced with this question at the ballot box come the fall here. We're going to bring into the conversation right now our friend Ashley Walker. She's the general consultant to Florida Women's Freedom Coalition. That is the group responsible for the effort to put that very question on the ballot to Florida voters. She joins me. Ashley, good to see you. Thanks for being with us here. You might have been watching some of our coverage there of what all took place today in Arizona on the question of abortion. But now to Florida, where you are as well. What's different for women in the state after yesterday, now that this 6-week abortion ban is in effect? How has their lives changed?
Well, thank you, Andrew. It's nice to see you again, and thank you for having me on this evening. Yeah, the last 24 hours has been pretty devastating for Florida women and, quite frankly, Florida families. Yesterday, May 1st, a near total abortion ban went into effect, which means across the Sunshine State, there's going to be a lot of Florida families and women that are not able to get the care that they need and they will have government interfering in the healthcare decisions that they need to make with their medical providers.
You know, I want to talk, though, because yet again, the issue will be put to everyday Floridians when they go vote in November, Ashley. You're instrumental in that effort. What is that question going to look like when they go into the ballot box? How will it be phrased?
Yeah, it's a very simple, straightforward ballot measure that basically says that the state legislature cannot create any law that restricts or delays a woman's ability to have reproductive care up until the point of viability. And then beyond viability, only when a woman's life is at risk or in an instance of rape or incest. So it basically provides protection so that a woman knows that she can work with her family, her medical provider, and make decisions for her own reproductive care that makes the most sense for her and her family. And so while May 1st was a turn back, felt like a turn back in time for women. The silver lining in this is that in November, Florida voters have the ability to say enough is enough, and we believe that women should have the ability to make her own decisions in reproductive care along with her family and with her healthcare provider. And so that is the good news at the end of this day is that this issue will be on the ballot, and Florida voters will have the ultimate say in what is the final policy here in the Sunshine State.
So, Ashley, is it fair to interpret and characterize this ballot referenda as enshrining the right of abortion in the state constitution, or no? Is that accurate?
Yeah, it's accurate. I mean, it goes about it by basically preventing the government from creating any law that prevents a woman to have an abortion, but essentially the inverse will happen. It will basically ensure that women are able to have access to reproductive care up until viability, and it will pretty much enshrine that into the state constitution. So that means the state legislature would not be able to create any law that hinders that ability without going to the Florida voters, again, to update the Constitution.
Okay, and just to play counterpoint here, Florida Republicans, presumably some of your critics have said, the wording is so vague that it can be misinterpreted, that it can be misconstrued here. How do you respond to accusations like that? Are you worried that it could be perceived as a vague amendment and therefore its so-called or perceived strength will be misapplied?
I could not disagree anymore. I mean, it is as pretty straightforward as it could be. It is 3 sentences that is pretty clear. I think the reality is that a lot of politicians have been playing around with women's ability to access healthcare, and this amendment will prevent that from happening in the future. And so I think it's pretty clear, and I think when Florida voters go in to cast their ballot, it's going to be really clear what the choice is. They can have the current law that is a near total abortion ban, or women can work with their providers, their medical providers and their families to make decisions for them up until the point point of viability, which is about 24 weeks.
You know, I wanted to ask, too, amongst, Florida Republicans, Governor DeSantis, I mean, do they have any things up their sleeve where they can delay or counteract this movement, this effort here? Are they planning anything to counteract the ballot proposal, much like we saw in Ohio?
You know, I think that we are fully expecting an opposition campaign to this effort, and I think a lot of the same extreme politicians that passed this near total abortion ban will be campaigning against that, and we're fully expecting that. You know, it's hard to say. I think it would be a sad state if they do try to fool around with this. This ballot amendment is basically giving Florida voters a say in this policy, and I think any effort to create more misinformation or any effort to mess around with that is simply because a lot of people are afraid because they've seen what's happened. Not just in progressive states, but more conservative-leaning states like Kansas and Ohio. When this issue is brought to voters, voters know where they stand. They don't want to turn back to the 60s and the 50s where women were dying from having illegal abortions. They want to make sure that women are free from government interference in their ability to get this type of reproductive care. And so I'm confident that when this goes to the Florida voters, that this will pass. We will meet that 60% threshold. And any effort to mess with that is because they know the truth, too. And they see the same polls that I do that shows that over 70% of Florida voters support this referendum. The exact language that is on the ballot. And I think it's a testament to where not just Floridians, but Americans are. And that's what we're seeing across the country is voters coming out and saying enough is enough. This is 2024 and we need to have advanced medical care available to Florida families and American families across the country.
All right, Ashley Walker, we'll just have to wait and see alongside you. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you so much.
If my father were here, he'd say, I apologize for my back. I apologize. But thank you very much. Look, folks, thank you. Being a teacher isn't what you do, it's who you are, and it matters. Before I get started, I just came from Charlotte. I spent some time with some of the families of the 8 police officers who were shot in the line of duty on Monday. 4 of them were killed. Joshua Iyer, Elliot, Sam, and I'm going to mispronounce his name, Poliski, and Thomas Weeks. We pray for their loved ones and those left behind. I met their children, their husbands, their wives, and their mothers and fathers. And we pray for the recovery of the brave wounded as well. Every time an officer puts on that shield and walks out the door, the family member wonders whether they're going to get that call until they come home. I'm serious. The entire nation is grieving for these families. While crime rates are down nationally, we've invested a record amount in public safety, violence interruption. We've also done much work to make communities safer. But to protect our officers, we have to get them the resources they need to be able to do their job and to keep the weapons of war out of the hands of people without... To the men and women of law enforcement, you represent the best of us. And I want to thank you, and God bless you all. May He keep you safe. Governor Cooper, thank you for having us today. And I've been saying this for well over 2 years. You got one of the best governors in the United States of America. And I mean it sincerely. When I think of the Gov, one word comes to mind. I mean it sincerely. Integrity. He has absolute integrity. And Mayor Sappho, thanks for the passport to your city. And by the way, you ain't the only Wilmington in America. I'm from Wilmington, Delaware. And guess what? The mayor lived in Wilmington, Delaware. Delaware as well as here. He lived in Wilmington, Delaware. His daughter graduated from my alma mater, University of Delaware. And we lived, where he lived is only about 1.5 miles from where I live. And thanks to a favorite son of North Carolina who's doing a great job as an administrator of the Environmental Protection Agency, Michael Regan. Folks, I'm here to talk about something very basic and fundamental to our communities, to our economy, to our basic human dignity. Safe, clean drinking water. For generations, water was delivered through lead service pipe lines, connecting the main water line in the streets to the homes and schools and businesses in this city and around the country. These lead lines are tough, durable, but they don't rust. But we've long since learned they leach poisonous toxins into our water. The science is clear. Lead service lines pose severe health risk, damaging brain and kidneys. In children especially, they stunt growth, slow learning, and cause lasting brain damage. But we know we can stop it. We know how to do it. One study shows when you reduce lead exposure for children, their test scores actually improve in school as much as they would if they reduced the class size by a third at 1/10 the cost of doing that. It pays off across the board. But today, 9 million lead service lines connect water mains to our homes, schools, daycare centers, businesses. That includes some 300,000 lead service lines here in North Carolina alone. 300,000. The cost to replace them is consequential. But too many families only learn the threat to their children after they get sick. You know, this is for some time why I'm been determined to fix it. And we're finally moving. Until the United States of America, God love us, deals with this, how can we say we're a leading nation in the world? For God's sake, we're better than this. Let me say what I've said many times before. There's no safe level of lead exposure, none. Right. The only way forward is to replace every lead service line that connects Americans to clean water. Yeah. That's why Kamala and I are making sure the administration is the first ever to set out to do it, and we're going to get it done. Yeah. As a consequence of the first major law I signed, that not many other teams signed up to support, the American Rescue Plan back in March of 2021, we provided North Carolina with historic investments in clean water money. Governor Cooper dedicated $2 billion from the American Rescue Plan for 800 clean water projects all across this state. It not only includes removing lead service lines, but uses modern technology to sanitize storm and wastewater systems, in addition to connecting thousands of homes to clean tap water for the first time. These clean water projects include testing every water fountain in every school across the state and removing lead hazards, as Paris mentioned. Now look, our landmark bipartisan infrastructure law is allowing states across the nation to do more by investing in a record $15 billion so far, nationwide, in lead pipe removal. Today, we're releasing a third installment of that funding, an additional $3 billion nationwide, which will bring the total to $250 million for North Carolina so far, including here in Wilmington. It's going to replace 300 lead pipe service lines connecting homes, schools, and business here in Wilmington. Governor, I hear you're breaking ground sometime today. Congratulations, pal. Congratulations. Folks, this is about safety, but it's also about basic fairness. Nationally, we're directing nearly half of the funding to disadvantaged communities, half of it, that have borne the brunt of lead poisoning for so long. Studies show communities of color have been the hardest hit. We have to make things right, and we're going to make them right now. And when we do, we'll mean clean water, healthier communities, peace of mind, and jobs befitting those communities. Jobs of plumbers, pipe fitters, laborers, engineers, good-paying jobs you can make a serious living with without a college degree to raise a family on. And folks, protecting people from lead pipe contamination is just one of our nation's most ambitious water agendas ever. We're upgrading old water mains, treatment plants. Some of them are as old as 100 years old here in America, 100 years old. And finally, we're improving water systems on tribal lands, where nearly half of the population still lack clean water. And we're detecting and removing so-called forever chemicals, referred to as PFAS, B-FAS-. They're discharged from companies and military bases into our water supply. They're very dangerous chemicals that shouldn't be near our water supply. Earlier this month, Environmental Protection Agency Administrator Reagan and Governor Cooper here in Fayetteville, North Carolina, as my administration issued its first ever national PFAS standard to get those dangerous chemicals out of our drinking water. But that's not all. Communities across the Cape Fear watershed know too well why this matters. As a consequence of PFAS, you've seen aggressive cancers emerge in that area. It's gone so far, we're advising and warning you can't eat the fish from the same water that you drink. That's how far it's gone. My administration is investing an additional $9 billion more than ever in the history of America to finally get rid of PFAS chemicals now. And to get safe, clean drinking water to you and 100 million Americans across the country presently exposed to PFAS. And my infrastructure law makes the most significant investment in America's infrastructure in generations. It includes roads, bridges, ports, airports, public transit, and so much more. It includes a new passenger train from Raleigh to Richmond, which, by the way, reduces pollution and takes thousands of vehicles off the road. And provide over 1,000 good-paying jobs. Nationwide, 51,000 projects and 4,500 communities have been announced so far. To date, This has dedicated over $9 billion to North Carolina alone. $9 billion. In January, I was in Raleigh to announce the most significant ever investment in affordable high-speed internet for every single person in North Carolina. Because high-speed internet is today as important as electrification was a century ago. It's a means of communication, being able to compete. It's not enough to just have internet access. It needs to be affordable. That's why my administration is saving families around $30 a month in internet bills. Over 900,000 households in North Carolina have saved a conglomerate of $550 million on their internet bill. But that program, called Affordable Connectivity Program, runs out of money this month. For months now, I've asked the Congress to extend the funding, but my Republican friends in Congress have failed to act. Now I'm calling them to act now, so 1 in 5 North Carolina families don't see their internet bills go up next month. You know, this progress is part of my vision for an economy that grows from the middle out and the bottom up, not just the top down. I'm sick and tired of trickle-down economics. We weren't poor, but I come from a middle-class household. 3-bedroom home, split-level home. My grandpa lived with us, 4 kids, and my dad and mom. My dad used to say, Joey, a job's about a lot more than a paycheck. It's about your dignity. It's about respect. It's about being able to look your kid in the eye and say, honey, it's going to be okay. And it's about being able to have a little bit left over at the end of the month when everything's paid. And guess what? The plan we put in place is beginning to work. We've created a record 15 million jobs since I came to office. There was any president has 15 million. Including 460,000 right here in North Carolina. Unemployment is down in North Carolina from 5.6% to 3.5%. Lower than any year under the previous administration, and the lowest in 25 years. Wages are rising nationwide, up 3% in North Carolina. I realize there's more to deal with. There's more we have to do. There's a lot of, the corporations are adding on costs that aren't justified. By the way, Walmart just announced that they opened a new store, and they just announced that they're going to charge for all the products they have the same exact price it was charged before the pandemic. Before the pandemic. And we're eliminating thousands of junk fees. It used to be, right now, you bounce a check in your bank, you're likely to be charged between $35 and $50 for that bank overcharge. Guess what? They can't now charge more than $8. Same with credit card fees. Look, and manufacturing is booming. Nearly 800,000 new manufacturing jobs and counting. Where in God's name is it written we can't be the leading manufacturer in the world? Where is that written? It's not. In cities like Wilmington are coming back. We're doing all this at the same time. We're cutting the federal deficit. We cut the federal deficit by failing to make the very wealthy and big corporations begin to pay their fair share. And by the way, I've been fighting for years as a senator. I know I look like I'm only 40, but I'm a little bit older. We're taking on Big Pharma. You know, if any of you have a prescription that has to be filled, I can put you in Air Force One. You pick any city in Europe or in parts of the Middle East or in Asia. Take you that same prescription, get it filled in those countries, in Berlin or in Toronto, Canada, or in Rome, Italy. You'll pay 40 to 60% less than you pay here. How many of you know somebody who has the need for insulin because they have diabetes? Well, guess what? It now costs not $400 a month, $35 a month. And by the way, they're still making 350% profit. It only costs them $10 to make it. And by the way, when I first got this passed, it included everybody, not just the elderly. And guess what? This next term, I'm going to make